Decision Making and Creativity, Chapter 6.
The learning objectives. Rational choice paradigm. Identifying issues with problem identification. Stakeholder framing is when the stakeholder status may influence some of the organizational decisions. Mental models are preconceived prototypes of how things should be that sometimes guide our thinking. Decisive leadership are leaders that are able to make decisions very quickly and sometimes too quickly. Solution-focused problems, where the problem itself is not defined. And finally, perceptual defense, when the brain automatically blocks out negative information. There are effective ways to identify problems and opportunities. One can become aware of the 5 aforementioned problems with identification, stray away from complacency, make thoughtful logical assessments of situations, and discuss issues with colleagues to gain different perspectives. Evaluating and choosing alternatives. According to the rational choice paradigm, people rely on logic to evaluate and choose alternatives. It is also assumes that decision makers have well articulated and agreed on organizational goals, that they efficiently and simultaneously process facts about all alternatives and the consequences of those alternatives, and they choose the alternative with the highest payoff.
Exhibit 6.2 distinguishes rational choice and observations from organizational behavior. Under the rational choice paradigm, assumptions goals are clear, compatible, and agreed upon, whereas under the observations from organizational behavior, goals are ambiguous, are in conflict, and lack full support. RCPA decision makers can calculate all alternatives and their outcomes, whereas OOB decision makers have limited information processing abilities. RCPA decision makers evaluate all alternatives and use absolute standards to evaluate alternatives, whereas OOB decision makers evaluate alternatives and evaluate them against implicit favorite.
Evaluating decision outcomes. Decision makers are not always completely honest with themselves when evaluating the effectiveness of their decisions. One problem is confirmation bias. These people with this form of bias ignore or downplay the negative features of the selected alternative and overemphasize its positive features. Escalation of commitment. There are 4 main influences scholars have identified as to why people are led deeper and deeper into failing projects. The first is self-justification. Here, individuals are motivated to maintain their course of action when they have a high need to justify their decisions. Next is the prospect theory of effect. This theory states that we are willing to take more risks to avoid losses than to increase our gains. The third is perceptual blinders. Here, even when decision makers see that something is wrong, the information is sufficiently ambiguous that it can be misinterpreted or justified. And lastly is closing cost. Even when a project's success is in doubt, decision makers will persist because the costs of ending the projects are too high. For example, the stopping of major project before its completion may involve large financial penalties and a bad public image. The roles of emotions. Emotions affect the evaluation of alternatives in 3 ways. The first way is emotions form early preferences. Logical analysis also influences which alternatives we choose, but it requires strong logical evidence to change our initial preferences. The second is emotions change the decision evaluation process. A considerable body of literature indicated that moods and specific emotions influence the process of evaluating alternatives. And last is the emotions serve as information when we evaluate alternatives. Marketing experts have found that we listen in our emotions to gain guidance when making choices.
Roles of intuition. Intuition refers to the ability to know when a problem or opportunity exists and to select the best action without conscious reasoning. Intuition is both an emotional experience and a rapid non-conscious analytic process. These signals warn us of impending problems. All gut feelings are emotional signals, but not all emotional signals are intuition. The problem is that emotional responses are not always based on well-grounded mental models. Instead, they occur when we compare the current situation to more remote templates, which may or may not be relevant.
Benefits of employee involvement. Involvement, also called participative management, refers to the degree to which employees influence how their work is organized and carried out. These involved employees can improve decisions quality. Employees are in many ways the company's radars. When there are issues with the company's customers, the employees are usually the first to know. It is because of the employees that everyone in the organization are alerted to such problems. Employee involvement can potentially improve the number of quality of solutions generated, improve the evaluation of alternatives, and overall employee involvement tends to strengthen employee commitment to the decisions. Identifying four contingencies that affect the optimal level of employee involvement. The first is decision structure. Programmed decisions are less likely to need employee involvement because the solutions are already worked out from past incidents. The second is source of decisions and knowledge. Many times employees are closer to customers and production activities, so they often know where the company can save money, improve products or services quality. The next is decision commitment. If employees are unlikely to accept decisions made without their involvement, some level of participation is usually necessary. And last is risk of conflict. Two types of conflict undermine the benefits of employee involvement. The first is employee goals and norms conflict with the organization goals. Only in a low level of employee involvement is that visible. Second, the degree of involvement depends on whether employees will agree on the preferred solution. Now we move on to the creative process model. The creativity is when ideas are generated that are considered socially recognizable contributions. The creative process involves four stages: preparation, incubation, insight, and verification. Preparation is when the problem is defined and then required information is collected. Incubation is when the shift of our focus from the problem and let our mind continue to work on it in the back of our minds. Insight is when the light bulb usually goes off and we have some sort of unique insight. And last, verification occurs when the ideas from the preparation process are evaluated and promote creative insight. Supporting creativity. There are four characteristics that improve creativity in the workplace: cognitive and practical intelligence, independent imagination, subject knowledge and experience, and persistence.